How's it going, guys? It's K-Cars and I'm back with another Jeep video today. We're actually going to be replacing the valve cover gasket on my 2001 Jeep Cherokee XJ. So let's go ahead and get started. Somehow this thing actually did pass inspection even with a pretty good sized rust hole in the driver's side rocker. Don't know how well you guys can see that, but there it is. So it did pass inspection and they did give me a few recommendations of things that I should repair or replace. One of those things was the valve cover gasket. The other thing was the rear main seal. So today, like I said, we're going to be replacing the valve cover gasket. You can see there's a good bit of, I don't know, like sludge and stuff around the whole valve cover here. So we're going to take this thing off, clean it out, and obviously replace the gasket. Here's the actual gasket that I'm going to be using. It's from Felpro. And the part number here, as you can see, it is VS50458R. So this includes the valve cover as well as the 15 rubber grommets that go along with the gasket. As you can see, here are the actual screws that hold it on. There's also an aluminum washer, and then the rubber grommet is right underneath that. So it's kind of nice to get new rubber grommets, but the screws and the aluminum washers are gonna stay the same, so we're not replacing those, just the rubber grommets. As you can see, there are a few things covering the valve cover, so we're gonna have to get rid of these things. First thing we're gonna do is take off the throttle lines right here. So this is pretty easy. You just have to disconnect them from over here. This one right here is just on a little ball, and then this one in front, you kind of just have to slide it towards that way. You can see there's a little opening on the inside. So just slide it and it should come off. You might have to use some force. And then once you have those off, we're going to unscrew these two screws. You might have three, but this one only has two. So as you can see right there, and then also right down there, these are going to be 10 millimeters. And then we're also going to have to take off these vacuum lines. So this one right here, as well as this one in the back. And then we're probably gonna just take these hoses out of the holder and move them out of the way. We don't have to completely take them off. And then also one other thing is, I don't know if we're gonna have to take off this wiring harness. I've heard that it can make it easier, but it's not completely necessary. So if I don't have to take it off, I'm not going to. So we're gonna start off by taking off these throttle lines right here. All right, there's one. I'll take the second one off right here. Like I said, this one is just on a ball, so just kind of have to pry it off. Wasn't too bad. We're just going to unscrew the actual assembly here that holds the throttle lines on. So this is just going to be a 10 millimeter. Alright, so now that we have the actual holder unscrewed, we can go ahead and remove these lines from their little holder on the valve cover. Now we can just take this and set it off to the side so it's out of the way. That should be good right there. And then also while we're here, we can go ahead and take these lines off too. So when taking these off, you do want to be pretty careful because these valves right here are pretty easy to snap. So just be careful with that, obviously. But you also want to be careful with this one in the back. Now last time I took this off, I actually did snap the actual hose. So I just got to be careful about this one. Hopefully this one doesn't shatter like last time because it's brand new. So it should be pretty flexible. There we go. Now I'm just going to move this out of the way. I'm not going to take this one completely off. We can also remove this cable right here. I'm not going to take this one off because I don't think I actually have to. So there we go. We can take these hoses out. Move them out of the way as well. There we go. That should be good, I think. And we have this little holder right here. So I just took off the little holder that holds the heater hoses onto the valve cover right here. This is just stuck onto one of the screws or studs on the valve cover. So I went ahead and took that off. Seems like that's all we have to do unless we have to take the wiring harness off. But now we can actually go ahead and unscrew all the screws that are holding the valve cover in place. And that's going to be an 11 millimeter, and these are pretty loose, so they're not too hard to actually unscrew. The problem is I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to get to the one that's all the way back there. I've heard that people have used like a swivel bit or like a socket, and I actually don't have that, so should be interesting, but see if we can figure something out. And I'm also hoping that I don't have to do anything over here, like take this off, because I don't want to like mess anything up. So if I don't have to take anything extra off, then I won't. Okay, so some of these are going to be studs and some are just going to be like regular screws. So you want to make sure that you remember where the studs go and also where the screws go. What I did is I just took a picture of each side so I remembered where each of them went, so I can have that picture to look back on whenever I'm actually putting them back in. Alright guys, so I have decided that I am going to take this wiring harness off just so I can move these wires around here, like in the back, a little bit easier and get more access. So it seems like you literally just have to pull it straight out. These first two came out pretty easily, and this last one might be a little bit more difficult. Alright, so I don't know how much that actually helped because it's really not flexible at all, so I can't really move it that much, but hopefully it'll help at least a little bit. If you guys look all the way back here, there's like a little, I don't know what this thing is called, but it's on top of the stud. It's holding all these wires all together here, so I guess it's just there for them to not move, but I can't get this thing off of the stud. Like, it's not moving at all. It's just a little piece of plastic, so not really sure what's up with that, but when I get it figured out, I'll let you guys know. Alright guys, as you can see, I did get this little holder off the stud, and what I did, it's kind of hard to explain, but I took a flathead screwdriver and just put it inside the little gap that was underneath there and just twisted it, and it eventually just lifted right off, and then you just pull it the rest of the way. So that's all I did for that. It took me a while to figure it out because I thought it was just stuck on there, but that's what I did and it came off. The last one we have to get out is going to be buried way back in here. Not too sure how I'm going to get to it, but taking off this wire harness made these wires a little bit more flexible so I can get them out of the way as best as possible. But it's still going to be really tight under there, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, you got it, you got it, yep. Try it that way.
Alright guys, as you saw, we did get the valve cover off. Now it was a little bit difficult. I think the main problem was just these wires over here were in the way. Then in the front, this hose was also in the way, so I just kind of had to wiggle it out and make sure everything was out of the way. And then here, as you guys saw, I did take the wire harness off. And there's also a little, I think it's like a heat shield or something, but I ended up taking this off as well just to give me some more room. Now for that last screw in the very back, so this is what I used to get that last screw off, just because it's nice and shallow, so it's not going to be hitting any like of the metal pieces over there. So what I did is I just got it started with this, then just used my fingers to get it off the rest of the way. And that's why I did that. And then after that, you literally just have to lift it up and just wiggle it out. Here's what the valve cover actually looks like. As you can see, obviously it is going to be oily. I'm going to be cleaning this thing. Probably going to use throttle body cleaner because that's like the only thing I have. And then we're also going to have to take these rubber grommets out, as well as these aluminum spacers on top. And we're actually going to be using the aluminum, but we're going to be replacing the rubber. So to get these off, you should just be able to pry it off with a screwdriver. First with your finger. There we go. So that's all it is. So here's the aluminum, which is what we're going to be keeping. And underneath that is this rubber grommet, which is what we're going to be replacing with new ones. We're going to have to go ahead and take off all of these, and then, like I said, make sure you just keep the aluminum ones. So once you get that off, we can go ahead and remove the old gasket, which is just right over here. It should come off pretty easily. You might have to pry it off, but once you get one side started, then you can just peel it right off. Alrighty guys, so I went ahead and cleaned the actual valve cover. Got all the grease and gunk out of this like the little lip here where the screws go. There was a whole bunch of like grease and dirt and a bunch of like buildup in there, so I got all that off, as well as like the whole valve cover, as well as the inside. There's a little bit of rust here, so obviously you can't really clean that off. And then going over here, of course you do want to clean the surface where the gasket is. So as you can see, it's not going to be perfect, but just do your best and it should be good. So right now what we're going to do is take these rubber grommets and put them in the valve cover, and then we're going to put those aluminum spacers in over the rubber grommets. Once we have all the rubber grommets in, we can go ahead and put all of the aluminum spacers back in. And one thing that you want to remember is, I think it will be easier if you put the rubber grommets in like separately from the aluminum spacers. If you put the spacers in the grommets and then try to put them in the actual valve cover, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to do it that way, just because the rubber grommet will already be like spread out. Alrighty, so now that the surface is clean, we can go ahead and put the new gasket back on. So for this, you want to make sure that these two holes are on the passenger side. That's because there are these little like rods in here that hold it in place. So that's the only way it'll go on. Once the gasket is back in place, we can go ahead and put the actual valve cover back on. Now for this part, it's probably going to be easier to have two people, just to have somebody like hold all this stuff back and all the wires. And yeah, it's just going to be a lot easier that way. Alright guys, so we did get the valve cover back on. As you saw, we did have to wiggle it back and forth a little bit, and it did get caught on the screw that's way back over here. Probably can't see it, but it was sitting on top of that screw just barely. So we just took a screwdriver and hit the back of it with a hammer just to move the valve cover literally like 1 millimeter over, so we could clear the screw, and then it eventually went down so it could sit flush with the gasket. So now the only thing left to do is put the screws back on and then just make sure everything else goes back into place. So right now I'm just going to put the screws on. Alright, so we got all the screws back on. Now what we're going to have to do is just put this wiring harness back into place, as well as put that little, I don't know what you want to call it, but that little wire holder that was on that stud back there. We're also going to go ahead and put that on. And then of course we're going to put the throttle cables back into place and screw them in, as well as attach the vacuum lines back to the valve cover. Alright guys, so we're done with the whole process. As you guys saw, I did have to put all these little hoses back on here, and the throttle lines and the, you know, all the stuff, these hoses, the vacuum hoses and everything else. So all that is back, so we're all done with this. Once again, the gasket that I use is the Felpro. Part number is right here, VS50458R. This came with the valve cover gasket as well as the 15 rubber grommets. And also remember that you will have to reuse those aluminum spacers for the grommets. So don't throw those away. You can throw the rubber grommets away though. That's it for this install. If you guys want to see me installing spark plugs and a new coil pack on this Jeep, make sure to check out my previous video. If you guys have any questions about anything, make sure to drop those down in the comments, as well as any video suggestions for videos you would like to see in the future. And if you guys like this video or found it entertaining or informative, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.